The Hale family empire wasn't just a business, it was a dynasty. For over 40 years, Richard Hale had built Hale Enterprises into one of the most powerful corporations in America. From skyscrapers in New York to oil fields in Texas, the Hale name was etched across industries like a signature carved in steel. But power always came with a price. Inside the grand Hale mansion, marble floors, towering chandeliers, oil paintings of ancestors who had fought wars and built fortunes. The family gathered for Richard's 65th birthday. Every detail screamed wealth, but beneath the glitter, cracks had begun to form. The eldest son, Daniel, sat stiff at the far end of the long dining table. At 35, he had inherited his father's sharp jawline and ambition. But not his loyalty. Daniel had always felt overshadowed by Richard's towering presence. And whispers in corporate boardrooms hinted that he had grown. Impatient waiting for his turn. Next to him, Michael, the middle son, leaned back in his chair with a glass of wine. Michael wasn't ambitious like Daniel, but he was loyal. Always defending his father's decisions. He lived for the family name, not the power. At the other end of the table sat Emily, the youngest. Just 22, bright-eyed, curious, and still protected by innocence. To her, the family empire wasn't about money or power, it was about legacy. About pride. She adored her father and believed her brothers would one day carry the torch together. But Richard knew better. He tapped his glass, rising to speak. His voice, though aged, still commanded attention. Tonight, we celebrate not just my years, but the years this family will carry forward. Our empire will not die with me, it will live through my children. But remember this. His eyes swept across the table, lingering on Daniel. Blood ties mean nothing without trust. Betray me, and you betray us all. A tense silence followed. Emily smiled nervously, clapping first to ease the mood. Michael joined in. But Daniel remained still, his jaw tight. Eyes burning with unspoken words. Richard raised his glass. To family. But Daniel didn't drink. Deep inside, a storm was brewing, one that would tear the Hale empire apart. The warning in Richard. Hale's voice still echoed in Daniel's ears long after the birthday. Celebration ended. Blood ties mean nothing without trust. Daniel clenched his fists as he drove back to his penthouse in Manhattan. Trust. His father had never trusted him. For years, he had been treated as the reckless son. The one who could not carry the empire. While Michael was praised for his loyalty and Emily adored for her innocence, Daniel was left standing in the shadows. But shadows were the perfect place to plot. Inside his penthouse, Daniel poured himself a drink and stared at the city skyline. The towers glittered like jewels, but all he saw was a battlefield. He had already made his move, a move Richard would never see coming. 4 months. Daniel had been meeting with Vincent Cross, the ruthless CEO of Hale Enterprises' rival corporation. Vincent was older, cunning, and willing to do whatever it took to bury Richard Hale once and for all. In a dimly lit restaurant booth, Vincent leaned forward with a satisfied smile. You've given me what I need, Daniel. Those trade secrets will cripple your father's empire. The contracts, the patents, it's all in my hands now. Daniel smirked, though his chest tightened. This isn't just business, Vincent. This is personal. He never believed in me. He never gave me a chance. When Hale Enterprises burns, he'll finally understand what it feels like to be powerless. Vincent raised his glass to revenge. But betrayal had its price. 2 weeks later, the boardroom of Hale Enterprises erupted in chaos. Richard slammed his fist on the table as executives presented devastating news. "Sir, our competitors have our strategies, our patents. Contracts we were negotiating for months have been stolen. We're losing billions." Michael leaned forward, panicked. "How is this possible? Our security is airtight." But Richard's sharp mind connected the dots quickly. His gaze shifted to Daniel, who sat across the room, unbothered, almost smug. "Daniel," Richard said, his voice low but dangerous. "What did you do?" Daniel smirked, leaning back in his chair. "What I had to do. You never trusted me, Father. You treated me like a liability. So I proved you right." Michael jumped to his feet. "You betrayed us. Your own family." Daniel's voice rose, years of resentment spilling out. "Family? Don't make me laugh. This empire was never mine, it was yours. I was never your heir, just your disappointment." Richard's face hardened. "You are no son of mine." The words cut deeper than any blade, but Daniel masked the pain with defiance. He stood, grabbed his briefcase, and walked out of the boardroom. From that day forward, Daniel Hale was disowned. The Hale Empire trembled, but the true earthquake was still to come. Daniel Hale walked out of Hale Enterprises that day with nothing but his pride. Richard had stripped him of everything, his position in the company, his access to the family fortune, even his name in the will. Overnight, Daniel went from heir apparent to a ghost. For the rest of New York's elite, the scandal was delicious gossip. The prodigal son, they called him. The one who sold out his own father. The betrayal was so infamous, tabloids splashed his face across headlines for weeks. Michael cut all contact. Emily, torn between love for her brother and loyalty to her father, wrote letters Daniel never answered. For her, he was a wound she couldn't close. But exile didn't break Daniel, it reshaped him. At first, he spiraled. The penthouse was gone, the parties disappeared. And the so-called friends who once worshipped his name turned their backs. For months, Daniel lived in silence, his anger burning hotter than ever. But then, he made a choice. He wouldn't beg for forgiveness. He wouldn't crawl back to the empire that had rejected him. No. He would build his own. Bigger. Stronger. Ruthless. He left America. In London, he learned finance. In Dubai, he mastered oil. In Shanghai, he struck deals that most men wouldn't dare attempt. Over the next decade, Daniel Hale transformed himself from the black sheep of one dynasty into the wolf leading another. Vincent Cross was his first mentor, but Daniel quickly surpassed him. By his mid-40s, Daniel had forged an empire of his own, Cross International. Not just a rival to Hale Enterprises, but a predator circling it. He became the man his father had always feared he would be: cold, cunning, unstoppable. But while the world saw Daniel's rise, only he knew the fire that fueled it. Every late night at his desk, every ruthless deal, every sleepless flight across continents. Behind it all was the image of Richard Hale's face as he disowned him. And the whisper of his father's words, "You are no son of mine." For 10 years, Daniel sharpened himself like a blade. And now, it was time to strike. New York hadn't changed much. The skyline was still sharp against the night. The city still pulsing with wealth, ambition, and hidden betrayals. But Daniel Hale had changed. His private jet touched down at Teterboro, and the world noticed. Cross-international banners had already spread across Manhattan's financial district, signaling that a new empire had arrived. The black sheep had returned, no longer in disgrace, but in triumph. When Daniel stepped out, tailored suit, ice-cold expression, and power radiating from every movement, the cameras went wild. To the press, it was the biggest scandal reborn, Richard Hale's disowned son returning not as a failure, but as a rival. At Hale Enterprises, Richard watched the news in silence. His jaw tightened, but his eyes betrayed something even sharper than anger, fear. "Father," Michael said cautiously, standing behind him. "He's not here to make peace." Richard's voice was steel. "He'll get nothing from me. If he thinks he can tear this family apart again, he'll regret it." But Emily, now grown, elegant, and carrying the quiet sadness of someone who had never healed from her brother's exile, felt a storm building. That evening, Daniel made his first move. The Hale family had gathered for Richard's annual charity gala, an event meant to display power and unity. The glittering ballroom overflowed with CEOs, politicians, and media. For years, it had been Richard's night. Until the doors opened. Gasps spread through the crowd as Daniel walked in. Every step deliberate, his presence commanding silence. He didn't sneak back into their world, he conquered it. Emily's heart stopped. Michael's fists clenched. Richard's face went pale, then hardened into fury. Daniel smiled faintly. "Father. Brothers. Sister." His voice carried through the hall. "Did you miss me?" The room buzzed with whispers, phones flashing. Reporters scrambling to capture the family confrontation of the decade. But Daniel wasn't here to beg or to explain. He was here to declare war. That night, every deal Richard had been negotiating suddenly slipped. Investors pulled out. Rumors spread that Cross International had acquired key partners. Within hours, Daniel had weakened Hale Enterprises without even lifting a finger. The black sheep had returned, not for forgiveness, but for blood. And this was only the beginning. Emily Hale had always carried the silence of her mother's death like an invisible wound. When Eleanor Hale passed away, everyone had accepted Richard's explanation, an unexpected illness. Sudden and cruel. Emily, still a teenager at the time, had grieved quietly, believing in her father's words. But after Daniel's return, something inside her shifted. That night at the gala, she saw the look in her father's eyes, fear, not anger. And Daniel's cryptic words as he left echoed in her mind. "Some truths never stay buried, Emily." She couldn't ignore it anymore. Emily went into the old family library the next morning, searching for the journals her mother used to keep. Eleanor had been meticulous, always writing about her days, her feelings, her worries. But the journals after her final year were gone. All except one. Hidden behind volumes of business law books, Emily found a small leather-bound diary. Its last entry was dated only a week before her mother's death. Her mother had written, "Daniel is not safe. Richard doesn't see it. But I know one of our children carries darkness in his heart. Secrets, whispers, and meetings in the dead of night. I fear this family will not survive what is coming." Emily's blood ran cold. Which child had her mother feared? For days, she dug deeper. She spoke to old house staff, revisited medical reports, pieced together scraps of conversations she remembered as a girl. The more she searched, the more one truth began to form, a truth that was darker than betrayal, darker than corporate war. Her mother's death hadn't been natural. There had been whispers about medication switched, about a sudden collapse that doctors couldn't fully explain. And every trail, every doubt, every missing page in the story led back to one person: Daniel, the brother who had returned with vengeance in his eyes. Emily's hands shook as she sat in her room late one night, staring at the diary. She didn't want to believe it. She loved Daniel. Even after everything, she had always hoped he would come back, that the family could heal. But if Daniel had played a part in their mother's death, then his return wasn't about justice. It was about finishing what he started. And Emily knew one thing for certain: if she didn't uncover the full truth soon, the Hale family would tear itself apart. Emily sat by her window, the city lights flickering against her face. The diary lay open on her lap, its words burning into her thoughts. One of our children carries darkness in his heart. Was her mother talking about Daniel? Or someone else? Her mind refused to settle. She remembered the nights when Daniel would sneak out, the hushed arguments with their father, the anger in his eyes when Richard denied him control of the company. Yes, Daniel had always been reckless, ambitious, even dangerous. But was he capable of murder? Emily closed her eyes. Memories of childhood flooded back, Daniel carrying her on his shoulders, Daniel defending her from bullies, Daniel sneaking her sweets when Richard scolded her for weakness. That brother couldn't have killed their mother. And yet, the evidence whispered otherwise. Her heart twisted. She couldn't tell her father. Richard already hated Daniel enough to destroy him completely. And Michael would never hesitate to turn suspicion into condemnation. But silence meant complicity. The next day, Emily made a decision. She would confront Daniel herself. She called him, her voice trembling but firm. "Meet me," she said. "No boardrooms, no lawyers, no family. Just us." That evening, they met in a quiet cafe away from the city center. Daniel arrived in his sharp black coat, his presence as commanding as ever. But when he saw Emily, his expression softened. The hardened wolf revealing a glimpse of the brother she once knew. "You look tired," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "I've been digging into the past," Emily whispered, her voice cracking slightly. "Into Mom's death." Daniel froze, his eyes narrowing. "Emily." "Don't," she cut him off. "I need to know. Was it you? Did you have anything to do with her dying?" The cafe noise seemed to fade. Daniel leaned back, his face unreadable. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, with a bitter smile, he whispered, "Do you really think I could kill the only person who ever believed in me?" Emily's heart pounded. His denial felt genuine, but then why did her mother's words point toward him? Daniel leaned closer, his voice low and dangerous. You're asking the wrong questions, Emily. If you want the truth, don't look at me. Look at the one still standing proudly beside Father. You'll find more poison there than you ever imagined. Emily's breath caught. Did he mean Michael? Or Richard himself? Before she could press further, Daniel stood up, tossing cash on the table. When you're ready to see clearly, you'll know where to find me. And then he was gone, leaving Emily torn between blood and truth. Love and suspicion. The daughter's dilemma had only just begun. The Hale mansion's study echoed with raised voices. Michael stood near the fireplace, his fists clenched, while Richard sat in his leather chair, silent but watchful. He's poisoning everything we've built, Michael spat. Cross International has stolen 2 of our biggest contracts. If we don't strike back now, we'll bleed out. Richard's eyes were cold. Your brother always wanted power. Now he has it. But Michael, power doesn't last without loyalty. He has none. Michael turned sharply. Then let me finish him. But before Richard could respond, the heavy oak doors opened. Emily walked in, pale, clutching her mother's diary close to her chest. Both men froze. What are you doing here? Michael demanded. Emily's voice trembled but held a strength neither expected. You keep talking about contracts and rivals. But do either of you even care what really happened to Mom? Richard's brow furrowed. Emily. She cut him off, tears brimming. I found her journal. She didn't die the way you said. She suspected one of us. She knew someone in this family carried darkness. The room went silent. Michael's jaw tightened. Don't let Daniel fill your head with lies. Emily stepped closer, her eyes locked on her brother. Funny you say that. Because he told me to stop looking at him. He told me to look at the one standing beside Father. Michael's face darkened. For a second, his composure cracked. And Emily saw something raw. Something dangerous flicker in his eyes. Daniel is twisting you, Michael snapped. Don't you see? He'll destroy us, Emily. He already destroyed Mom. But Emily wasn't sure anymore. Michael's defensiveness felt too sharp, too desperate. That evening, unable to rest, she followed Michael to the corporate headquarters. From the shadows of the parking lot, she watched as he met with a man she didn't recognize, an older physician. His coat still marked with a hospital insignia. She couldn't hear the conversation. But she saw the envelope Michael pressed into the man's hand. Saw the look of guilt on the doctor's face before he walked away. Emily's blood turned cold. It wasn't Daniel. It was Michael. Her chest tightened as realization crashed over her. Her brother, the one who had always played the loyal soldier, the good son, had been hiding the darkest secret of all. The sibling rivalry wasn't just about business anymore. It was about life and death. Emily's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she drove back home. The image of Michael handing that envelope haunted her. She had wanted to believe in him. To believe that at least one sibling had remained untouched by greed. But now. The next morning, she confronted him. Michael was in the boardroom, going over quarterly reports, when Emily stormed in. Her voice cut through the polished air like a blade. "Why did you pay that doctor?" Michael froze. For a fraction of a second, his mask slipped. Then, he forced a smile. "You've been spying on me." "Don't play games," Emily snapped, slamming her mother's diary on the table. "Mom knew something was wrong. She wrote about it. She was afraid. And now I know why, because you were behind it." Michael's face darkened, the smooth mask of charm melting away into something far more sinister. He stood slowly, his voice low but venomous. "You think you understand, little sister? You have no idea what it was like living under Father's thumb. Daniel got the blame, I got the obedience. And Mom would have given the empire to Daniel if she had lived." Emily's stomach dropped. "So you killed her?" Michael's jaw tightened. His silence was louder than any confession. He stepped closer, towering over her now, his eyes cold and sharp. "She was going to ruin everything. I did what had to be done, for this family. For me." Emily backed away, horror flooding her chest. For the first time, she truly saw the monster her brother had become, not the loyal soldier, but the hidden traitor. "Daniel was right," she whispered. At the sound of his name, Michael's expression twisted with rage. "Daniel will never have this family. Do you hear me? Never. I won't let him." Before Emily could respond, the boardroom doors opened. And there he was. Daniel. He leaned casually against the frame, but his eyes burned like fire. "I was wondering when you'd finally tell the truth, brother." Michael's face drained of color. "You." Daniel smirked, stepping into the room. "You think I came back just for business?" "No. I came back for the truth. And thanks to Emily, we finally have it." Emily's breath caught. The unmasking was complete. The real enemy was no longer hidden. The battle lines were drawn. The Hale estate dining hall had seen decades of banquets, celebrations, and power dinners. But tonight, it felt like a battlefield. Richard Hale sat at the head of the table, his expression carved in stone. To his right, Michael, tense, his mask of loyalty shattered but still trying to cling to control. To his left, Emily, pale but resolute, her mother's diary clutched tightly in her hands. And at the far end of the room, Daniel stood with the calm of a man who had waited 10 long years for this night. "Enough of the charade," Daniel said, his voice echoing. "We all know why we're here. To rip away the lies and see what's left of this family." Richard's glare cut like steel. "You come into my house, after betraying me, after ruining this family, and dare to speak of lies." Daniel's smile was cold. "Oh, I betrayed you. Tell me, Father, what's worse? A son who sells secrets, or a son who kills his own mother?" The room went dead silent. Michael shot up from his chair. "Lies. He's twisting everything." But Emily's voice cracked through the tension. "It's not a lie, Michael. I saw you. I know about the doctor. You poisoned her." Richard's hand trembled against the table. His eyes darted to Michael, searching for denial, for innocence, but all he saw was the truth written in his son's face. "Michael," Richard whispered, his voice breaking. "Tell me she's wrong." Michael's chest heaved. his carefully built mask collapsing under the weight of exposure. Finally, he exploded. She was going to give everything to Daniel. She was going to cut me out. I did what you never had the courage to do. I protected this empire. I protected us. Richard's face twisted with disgust. You protected nothing. You destroyed the only person who ever held this family together. Daniel stepped forward, his eyes locked on Michael. And now, brother, you'll pay for it. Michael sneered, his voice rising into madness. You think you can take this from me? You think you can erase me? I am the Empire. In one swift motion, he grabbed the heavy silver wine decanter from the table, his knuckles white with rage. For a moment, it seemed he would strike Daniel, but Emily threw herself between them. Stop, she cried. Tears streaked her face. This ends here. Mom died because of your hunger, because of your pride. If you want to kill each other, then do it over her grave, because that's where we'll all end up. Her voice shattered the room. Richard sank back into his chair, years of power draining from him. Michael's grip on the decanter faltered, and he let it crash to the floor, shattering into 1,000 pieces, just like the family itself. Daniel stepped forward slowly, his voice low and lethal. You wanted an empire, Michael. Now choke on the ruins. Michael's face twisted in defeat, his empire of lies crumbling around him. And for the first time in years, Daniel looked at Emily, not with vengeance, but with something softer. Gratitude. The Hale family had been broken beyond repair. Blood ties had turned to bloodshed, trust to ashes. But the truth was finally out. And the empire would never be the same again.